This is Tackle Talk Live, an inside scoop on how, when, and where to catch bass, with a primary focus on Toledo Bend and Sam Rayburn. Interviews with anglers who are consistent winners on the tournament trail. Your hosts, Camus Boats Pro Staffer Steve Graff and Gill Fishing Accounts Manager Kevin Jean. Two anglers who understand bass fishing with tournament success on all levels. Anglers willing to share their knowledge to help you become a better fisherman. So sit up and pay close attention as they give detailed tournament information and results. Here are the hosts of Tackle Talk Live, Steve Graff and Kevin Jean.
Welcome to Tackle Talk Live, now into our, that's right, fifth season, a show dedicated to helping you catch more fish with our primary focus today on Sam Rayburn. I'm Camus Boats Diver Pro Staffer Steve Graff, along with Gill Fishing Accounts Manager Kevin Jean. Kevin, today we're going to kick off our fifth season of Tackle Talk Live with our special guest, Clark Reehm of Elite Angler Academy, a guy still fishing at a high level. I'm looking forward to hearing what Clark's got to report. I know he guides on Sam Rayburn, so looking forward to hearing what Clark's got to say.
Yeah, Steve. I mean, we're starting off the year wide open. BFL this coming weekend. Next weekend, you have the Outlaw Team Series on Sam Rayburn. You got the Rattle Trap Tournament, the Brandon Belt coming up. I mean, you got tons of things going on at Sam Rayburn. So I know Clark's been on the water over there guiding a good bit. So we're going to hear what he has to say, give us a fishing report, talk about water levels, grass, so on and so forth, everything Sam Rayburn. Then we might, I know Clark's going to be fishing the EQs this coming year. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Also get his opinion on Toledo Bend. I know he hasn't really been over there, but having MLF and Elite Series back-to-back, he's fished at both of those levels, both those tournament trails, kind of get his opinion on those two things happening back-to-back on Toledo Bend. But, Steve, I'm excited. Fifth year, Tackle Talk Live. I can honestly say I never know if we've made it this far, especially at where we're at with the YouTube subscribers we have, to the followers we have on social media. God has blessed us with this podcast, and man, I've sure enjoyed it.
Well, for me and you, of course, it's all about the content. We enjoy talking hunting and not hunting, but fishing. We enjoy talking fishing, especially Sam Rayburn, Toledo Bend, and we will venture out to Lake Ford, Caddo Lake once in a while, Lake of the Pines. But overall, right now, Kevin, it's tournament time in the Arklatex. I mean, down here in the South, everything's kicking off this weekend, especially Sam Rayburn with the BFL number one. We're going to talk about the ABA Solo 150 Tour coming up in a couple of weeks. Maybe Clark can give us some good insight, maybe give some guys some ideas what we need to be doing over there, as I'll be participating in that tournament as well. And yes, it is on the same day as Bass Champs. Everybody wants to complain about that, but Kevin, you and I both know it's impossible to get off of everybody. There's going to be tournaments on top of each other.
Sam Rayburn specifically, you just can't.
That's right.
Everybody has every weekend booked up. I think Humphrey Pavilion's booked up for like the next 3 years. So good luck scheduling a new, tournament. You just have to kind of get in where you fit in and roll with it, But I think it's going to be a good year. Solo 150 has a really good schedule. There's a lot of really good schedules out there, Steve. I mean, we talked about this in the fall on the show, kind of the schedules for the year. And Toledo Bend has an awesome schedule. With everything it's got coming there, with all the championships it has coming there. Unfortunately, Bass Champs is not coming back to Toledo Bend this year, but that's another story for another day. But again, excited to kick off another year. I know we've had a lot of people asking, hey, when will you start back up? We always take off a little bit of the fall and the winter just because it's a slow time. But from this point forward, every Tuesday, we will be on Tackle Talk Live from now till June. Giving fishing reports, talking to winners of local tournaments, so on and so forth. So I'm excited. I'm excited to get back going, Steve. A lot has changed over the past year. Now I'm with Gill Fishing, and we kind of talked about that on our last show. And just seeing the intro there, it looks weird. It's been 10 years I've been at V&M, but now I'm with Gill, and really enjoying what I'm doing over there. And we've got some, we'll talk a little bit more about that later on as well.
That's exactly right. We got lake reports. We got a lot to talk about today right here on Tackle Talk Live. We're going to take a quick break to recognize a few of our sponsors, including our newest sponsor, and we'll talk with Clark Reehm of the Elite Angler Academy. You're watching Tackle Talk Live.
A good marine dealer is hard to find, but a great dealer is even harder. But in Iowa, Louisiana, there's a marine dealer that falls into the great category. Power Implements Marine, South Louisiana's go-to dealer for all things related to the boating industry. A Minn Kota, Garmin, and Mercury dealer, guaranteeing you first-rate service in both sales and repair. A great selection of new and used boats to choose from, including Skeeter, G3, Ranger, Camus, and Go Devil. A knowledgeable staff that will treat you like family and are always willing to go the extra mile to ensure you walk out a happy customer. To see everything they have to offer, go to powerimplements.com or stop by 606 East Miller Street in Iowa, Louisiana. Plus, mention Tackle Talk Live and save $500 off a new or pre-owned boat or $50 off your first service ticket. Toledo Health is a full-service primary and acute care clinic. Nurse practitioners Jarrett Rule and Melissa Vines bring quality health care that's needed and convenient to the area. Nothing is worse than being sick on your family or fishing getaway. Whether it's a stomach virus or a hook in the hand, Toledo Healthcare will try and meet all your health care needs. Appointments available and walk-ins are always welcome. So the next time you're feeling down at Toledo Bend, stop by Toledo Healthcare, located on Highway 6 just south of Toledo Town, or call 318-508-5323. The next time you're on I-49 just south of Natchitoches, Louisiana, stop by Cypress Knee Outdoors. A store within a store, Cypress Knee is located inside 3J's four-way. Whether you need gas, food, or drinks, they have it. While you're there, check out Cypress Knee Outdoors and pick up whatever hunting or fishing tackle you need. Top name brands like Strike King, Santone, Spro, or the #1 soft plastics made, V&M. On the hunting side, they carry guns from Mossberg, Winchester, and Remington. Plus, they've got a great supply of ammunition. Let John Abram and his staff show you everything Cypress Knee has to offer. Located just 1 mile east of 127 on I-49, or call 318-238-HUNT. You're watching Tackle Talk Live, a show dedicated to making you a better angler. Now back to the guys with all the inside scoop, Kevin Jean and Steve Graff.
This is Tackle Talk Live. Thank you for tuning us in. This segment presented by Toledo Health, the Boat Shop, 3J's four-way home of Cypress Knee Outdoors, and Power Implements Marine, located in Iowa, Louisiana. If you mention Tackle Talk Live, and you'll get $500 off with the purchase of a new or pre-owned boat right there at Power Implements Marine in Iowa, Louisiana, or you'll get $50 off the first service ticket on your service work. So,
Steve, that's something everybody can use. If everybody has to do service, especially now with these 4-strokes, everybody's going to get their yearly service done. Guys, you go down to Power Implements in Iowa, you'll get $50 off your service ticket. All you got to do is mention, hey, I heard it from the Tackle Talk Live guys. I get $50 off. Boom, it happens right there. So make sure, go by and mention us to them and save some money.
Kevin, I'm really looking forward to this interview with Clark Reehm. Clark, Clark needs no introduction, especially to the guys in this area. A guy that's been fishing in this region for a long, long time. Had some success on the higher levels with the elites. And Clark, man, welcome. We're glad to have you. Appreciate you taking time out of your day to come on. And I know you're fishing the EQs coming up this coming season. Just real quick, your opinion on the EQs, and that is a grueling schedule you guys are in for with, 9 events coming up?
Yeah, I fished at all different levels through the years. I started fishing full time in about 2007. I was actually working at Fort Polk as a graphic designer at that time. And, everybody wants to say, oh, it's a rich man's deal. You can't do it. You got to get time off. Well, bottom line is a lot of these guys that have qualified, are just blue collar guys or guys that had regular jobs that took a chance, leap of faith. And, I quit my job in 2007 at Fort Polk and made a run at fishing the open. I actually qualified for the elites there for the 2008 season and the Classic that year. But I mean, I left a 9-to-5 job just like a lot of these guys, and didn't have a lot of money. My dad was stationed at Fort Polk as a kid. My mom taught school, so it was a grind. And so when people want to look at the opens at this point, where you have to fish 9 events to try and qualify for the elites, I mean, it is grueling. And I tell guys, and I want people to take this to heart about tournament fishing. It doesn't matter if I'm fishing the EQs, the Elite Series, the BPT, fishing that championship where my kid qualified for the high school championship at Hartwell or a BFL or whatever. Expenses are all the same. It doesn't matter. Gas costs the same, hotels cost the same, everything costs the same. The only difference is entry fees. But you have to pay bigger entry fees for bigger payouts is the difference in all that. But when you're talking about going and fishing all these tournaments on the road, I mean, lodging is the same. The time you have to take off work is the same. The time away from family is the same. So it really doesn't matter what you're fishing. And so that aspect of it is grueling. Now, by them going to 9 events as opposed to 3, it changes the game where you have to be very diverse. You can't get lucky and have a tournament on your home lake that you make a top 10 on, and say you get help at another tournament that puts you on a top 10 bag, and then you get lucky and catch a big one at the next event, and boom, all of a sudden you've qualified for the elites for 3 events. When you've got 9, it takes that luck factor out, and the diversity of the fisheries makes it where you have to be versed in all different techniques and patterns and everything else. Well, until scoping came around, but that's all worms. But it just brings out who are the better anglers, and you can take the luck factor out of it.
Clark, on top of fishing EQs this year, you're guiding on Sam Rayburn. You've been guiding there for all fall and all winter. Big month of January going on Sam Rayburn with some very big tournaments starting off this weekend with the BFLs. So kind of take us through, first of all, let's just do a fishing report, kind of how you've been catching them, what you've been doing, what you're seeing. Just kind of give us a Sam Rayburn fishing report from what you've seen.
Okay, so, for one thing, I'm kind of known as an offshore guy at Rayburn. I mean, I've side scanned probably a quarter of the entire lake. I've been teaching graph classes and guidance since 2012. So that's a lot of time, a lot of hours on a motor, going out looking with clients, looking for myself for different events. And so, I tell people, you're better off fishing for 1 week solid or, several days in a row to learn how fish move and change, as opposed to going every Saturday of the year, because there's too big of gaps on fish movement and changes that happen whenever you've got 7 days in between. And, I use the expression, there's no substitute for time on the water is a fallacy. People say that all the time, but there's a big difference in time on the water and quality time on the water. And if you're an offshore guy, you have to spend the quality time behind your units, graphing, looking, side scanning, and figuring out how the fish are behaving. I'm not going to deviate and jump up and go fish grass, because to me, that's the easy fish. At any time, I can go shallow in some of the community hole areas and have just as good a chance of catching those shallow fish. But an offshore guy can't just bebop out there because he heard they're catching them in 18 foot of water. Because, again, a lot of it's going to be very specific and acute places.
Clark, one thing I've heard over the years, in my years of fishing tournaments, is that and right now, this time, cold fronts are coming through. Usually just once a week, you got a cold front you got to deal with. What does that do? Does that affect the deeper fish as much as it does the shallow fish? And is that why deeper guys are more successful early in the year? Because it doesn't affect those deeper fish like it does the shallow water fish.
Okay, so with all that preface, I said, I've spent most of my time on the lake because I've been on tour fishing, from March through, the spring and summer. So I've got extensive time on the water in November, December, January. And I can tell you that the shallow fish actually are affected the least amount from those cold fronts than the deep fish. Because when you're starting to deal with January, and everything changes at New Year's, okay? Because the last 2 months it's more like fall. Our winter is really only like 3 weeks in Louisiana. Right. And it's like January, first 2 weeks of February. Those are the coldest 3 weeks of the year. And one of the major tournaments coming up is actually going to fall in during that time period. But what happens is they start transitioning, and we need these cold fronts. They start transitioning from just straight up being on shad. That's all that matters is the food source. Okay. And they start transitioning to pre-spawn. We kind of bypass winter like a lot of lakes and fisheries do, because winter on a lot of places is ice. Okay. So we need these cold fronts for the physiology of these fish to move them along to get ready to spawn. And you're going to take fish that are out there feeding on shad right now, and then it's going to start pushing them shallower. And so what happens is that more of those fish are going to move shallower the colder it gets, because they're pre-spawning, and they start setting up on the hard spots. More fish start showing up in the grass. One of the problems with grass fishing over the last 2 months is that the bait fish has not been there. You can go there, resident fish that are living around the grass, or go in the backs of creeks where there's resident fish, but our shad does not move to the back of the creek. It stays on the main lake. What happens is when these big cold fronts hit, guys will tell me, oh, I was on them. What happened? And first thing I say is your bait was gone. You have to be cognizant and aware of where your bait is. And those offshore fish are 100% there to feed on bait. And what happens is that bait moves out closer to the river, or they move from the edge of the ledge of the structure out there halfway to where the river channel is. And if you turn your boat around, so you were catching them on a point, or an underwater drain on a big flat or something, if you start idling your boat out towards river channel, you're going to find those fish suspended out there chasing bait. And with forward facing sonar, it creates a whole different opportunity that was never there in the past. But at the same time, those shallow fish are going to hunker down in that grass. They're going to hunker down and sit in the bottom of these drain guts, and it becomes a reactionary bite at that point. And that's why rattle traps, jerk baits, things like that are always so productive in the wintertime here, is because fish aren't actually feeding. They're there, and it's a reaction. How many casts can you make? How many presentations can you put in front of one of those fish? And that's what's happening. And you wonder why you're losing so many fish on a trap a lot of times. It's because they're not eating it. They're just slapping at it. Because it's a reaction type deal. And those shallow fish are less prone to have the cold fronts affect them, because they're physically there to be caught. And those deep fish aren't there because they've moved out with the shad.
On Sam Rayburn right now, and there's fish in all stages. There is in January every year. Shallow, the grass fish, the deep fish, brush pop fish, so on and so forth. Let's just talk about the deep fish for now, because you're a deep water guy. With tournaments coming up, so somebody's BFLs and all these tournaments we have coming up back to the week. Where are you seeing the larger fish offshore? Let's just talk about offshore fish, because there's so much that goes into that question. You have the brush pops, you just have ledges. Or now with forward-facing sonar, you just have the fish that are chasing bait out there in the deep water. Where are you seeing the bigger fish right now on Sam Rayburn out deep?
In the shad. I know it sounds cliche with what I just said, but at the same time, fish are there because the food source is there. 11 months out, all a fish wants to do is eat. I got a report from a client I had who's pictures like, man, I wrecked him, and he showed me a picture of a 7-pounder. And I said, well, how'd you catch it? And he was like, it was mixed in with the shad. And the bigger fish we're catching, it's weeding through fish, but that's not a very good tournament strategy, because that's a surefire way to catch 10 to 12 pounds at the end of the day as well. And with some spotted bass mixed into that. So this time of year, our big fish do not run in big groups. People think there's a school and it's a magic deal trying to find this school of big ones. But this time of year, the school of big ones is going to be females that are setting up. And they're going to be schools of like 3 to 10 fish. They're not going to be these big mega schools that are giant. You'll see guides like myself, Brian Brandon will post some pictures of, side imaging or whatever of a lot of fish. And most of those are going to be your run of the mill 2 to 3 pound fish, which do not downplay a 3-pound fish on Rayburn, because there's very few guys in a tournament that cull out a 3-pounder ever. Okay, you'll have outlier weights where guys have monster bags, but you need heavy 2s and 3s to fill out a bag at Rayburn in a lot of these tournaments. But those bigger fish are going to not be out super deep most of the time. They're going to be in that mid-range, in that 8 to 16, give or take, on individual isolated cover, looking for easy meals. They don't want to have to get out there and fight with you.
And is that what you've seen lately? Is that 8 to 16 range is kind of where you caught your bigger ones?
That's year round.
Yeah.
That is absolutely year round. Okay. And, most of the time when I'm out there, I'm not running hard spots. I'm not running spider stumps, isolated log. And most of the really big fish that get caught on this lake are actually caught on isolated cover. It's an individual fish off a brush pile here, off a stump there, off a hard spot there. And most of the guys are having success right now with bigger fish. They're targeting those. And I hate to say it, but a lot of them are being scoped up where they're seeing that stump, this deal or that deal. And it's still a game of how many places can you run. You'll hear about a random big one caught out of the grass on a trap, square bill, on a bait, things like that. But for the most part, the shad hasn't been there to push those fish up into those areas. So those grass fish are getting the crud beat out of them. I mean, I was telling a guy that's fishing the invitationals, every weekend at Rayburn between now and that tournament in February, there'll be a minimum of 600 tournament anglers. Now, some of those team events, whatever else, but there'll be a minimum of 600 dudes every weekend fishing tournaments, beating it up prior to that event. And some of them have more than that. So all those, the low-hanging fruit fish are going to get picked off hard until a wave of fish with this cold pushes those fish up there to stage more, or until shad pushes up there to push more fish to feed in these drains around standing timber. I've gone through a couple community hole areas lately, and there's absolutely no shad in the standing timber in some of the key areas of the lake, which there's a reason they're not catching fish in those areas. So until they start moving up, to stage to go in those areas to spawn, you're not going to get a repopulation of fish, and those are getting pounded hard.
Where are you seeing the shad at right now?
Deep. That shad has moved out. In the last 2 weeks, things have changed quite a bit from a lot of the imagery that guys saw me posting in November and December. That shad is moving out deeper right now. It's going out there and suspending as it's cooling down. I got a report from a guy like 52 to water temp yesterday. I mean, 4 days ago when I was out there, it was 8 consistently. I don't think it's dropped that far. Everybody's gauge is going to be different. But it's still, we're going to be in that mid 50s range now, where those fish are going to stay out there on the deeper stuff, the deeper drains and stuff like that, until it's time to pull up a spawn.
Clark, how much of an effect, last year at this time, the lake was full. We're not full right now. We're 7 feet below pool right now. How are there certain areas that, especially running, I know can be a treacherous track right now on Sam Rayburn? Any advice on where to run, where you need to really be careful right now going with the low water?
Yeah, if somebody's got a hummingbird unit, I recommend and run the Lake Master. Even though the lake is 7 feet low, you want to sit there and adjust your depth range, your low water input. I wouldn't put it 7 feet low. If you put it 9 feet low or 10 feet low, for one, if there's a stump that protrudes up off the bottom a foot, that's what's going to take off your goodies right there. Mm-hmm. Okay. But it's going to give you that buffer zone to say, I can't run through there. Right now I've seen a few people still run behind the islands, Bird Island and stuff. I'm not going to do it. Okay. I'm going to either run around to Calhoun Point if I want to go into Harvey and come around that way, or I'm going to idle through the Amber Forest. But I can tell you, there's not a definitive way to idle through the Amber Forest without kissing a stump or two. Every time I go through, I try and go a different route, and there's not a way to do it. You just take your time. Don't do anything stupid. I clipped off a chunk of a cavitation plate the other day, just clipping a stump. But just take your time going through there. But I would not run that route. Whenever you're coming through and you get to where you can run past Amber Forest into Harvey, if you look at your map where the big ridge comes out from between Indian and Bird Island, there is part of that ridge about halfway to the bank from the tip. There's a high spot right there. I think there's one stump sticking up, but if you really slow down, you'll see there is a lot of brown right there. So anywhere that you see on your map, and I think on a Navionics chip, you can actually change it where you'll shade in to 6 foot deep. Okay. So if you change it where you highlight that 6 foot range, I think they give you like 6 to 18 to 30. I think those are color shade ranges there on a Navionics. If you turn it where you color in blue for that 6 foot range, that's going to tell you kind of those hot spots right there that are sketchy. But you need to, be cautious about that. If you're coming around the point at Caney, that one hump out there that Mark Rose caught him on that year in that FLW event, there's some skag marks on it right now. So I'd be careful around it. If you're running around the Black Forest, I think Clayton Bulware posted some waypoints of a stump on Peckerwood that is right underneath the water that you'll knock your stuff off. So for me, like if I'm coming around Peckerwood or around the Black Forest, if you look, it'll make almost a corner right there where the stumps, where this is like Mud Creek here. You'll see this the tree line come around right now. And there's like one isolated stump right there. I've been able to come in around that stump pretty close, because that other big stump is not that far over this way. So if you kind of use that stump as a marker and run around it, you can kind of see down that tree line that is the Black Forest right there. But when you start getting down towards like Preacher Ray's and some of those big flat points running that backside of the Black Forest, watch your gauge, because those flat points come out there a really long ways. I know some of them have hard clay and rock on it. I think they're pretty devoid of stumps. But, until you get down there to Preacher Ray's, when you get around Campbell Branch, which is kind of where the edge of Caney Flats is, that point comes out pretty shallow a pretty good ways as well. So, again, you may want to be cautious about some of that. And if you really want a good indicator, if you go on Google Earth and go back in time, that's kind of not a big secret deal anymore. Go back to 2009, not the 2011 image where it was down like 12, 13 feet. Go to 2009, because I think it was like 7 feet low in that image. And you can really see a lot of those places that you have to be really cautious about at this point going forward.
What about the canyons? I know you can't do the cut through. I'm sure it's probably bone dry a couple of places. Well, the road bed goes across.
Yeah. I mean, first off, you're not going to run through there anyway right now.
Right.
That line is there, that front side ridge of the canyons, where it's a giant flat right there. About halfway across that is where the stump row starts, and that stump row runs out kind of around towards the tip of the canyons. And that's the one that makes that hard edge that comes around like past Warsaw to Jackson Hill. But that line is right there. And in fact, idling across the flat, you're going to hit landmines at this point, because there's a lot of those places that it's not but 2 or 3 feet deep. There's a lot of those stobby type stumps through there. I don't think there's a lot of spider stumps, those giant, car hood size ones, but there's a lot of these small ones that you will clip even idling across there. But you'll start seeing, on your graph, you're going to get that pucker factor. It's going to be 2 feet deep through a lot of that stuff, and you'll start hitting a lot of those stumps. But if you're idling through the main drain there at the canyons, right when you get off plane at the mouth of it, you can start seeing those stumps. It is nothing but landmines going through the whole drain system right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Clark, a lot of guys are going to be making their way over to Sam Rayburn this week, starting practicing one for the BFL, starting practicing for all these other tournaments coming up. A lot of them haven't been on the water. They're just going to be starting practicing this week for all these upcoming tournaments. Give me and I'm going to say 3 to 5 rods. Give me 3 to 5 baits that you would have tied on if you was going to Sam Rayburn, say tomorrow, starting practicing. Let's just say the BFL this weekend. The Outlaw Team Series #1 event next week. If you're starting practice this week, give me 3 to 5 baits you would have tied on to start practicing this week.
All right, this is going to apply through February.
Okay.
Information is going to be the same type of fish. You're either fishing for winter shad fish or you're fishing for pre-spawn staging fish. All right, so and it's going to be 2 different deals. But if for me, I like the offshore game, so that's how I would go about it, even though I would have to go dabble up there shallow. But let's break it down for 2 different things. All right, the first thing that you're going to need on Rayburn, and there's probably more money won on a Carolina rig than anything else. And I get a lot of questions from guys about components, okay? First off, I throw a 3/4 ounce weight. A lot of the guys I know that Carolina rig fish, they throw a 1 ounce weight. I would not go lighter than that, because you can feel the bottom a lot better with that. I'm throwing, an elite or not elite, an epic tungsten weight. I'm throwing the barrel weight at this point in time, because I like the way it drags over hard bottom. And there's basically 2 baits that you throw on it, and everybody I know throws the same baits. Baby brush hog. Look, I've got sponsors. I'm sponsored by Yamamoto, but I'm telling you, this bait right here probably wins more money on a Carolina rig than anything else on the lake. The other one would be a Zoom Super Fluke. And the color, I don't care, as long as it's some form of watermelon or a green pumpkin, watermelon red, watermelon candy, watermelon, blue flake. I don't care. Pick your poison, what you have confidence in. I don't care about dipping the tail in chartreuse. Okay. It's all just about putting it in front of one. But that bait right there probably wins more money on the lake than anything. The next bait I'm going for, if I'm tournament fishing, probably a 6XD. This is one of the fish that I am looking forward to with the water dropping more than anything else, because all of a sudden this bait right here can hit bottom in places it hadn't been able to hit before. And there's probably more tournaments won deep cranking than anything else on Rayburn. What do you think?
Right.
You agree with that?
No, I do.
Yeah.
You know, there's more of those 30+ pound bags. Now, let's face it, there's not but like a dozen 30-pound bags weighed in every year on the lake. People see those and they're like, ooh and all. But I can tell you right now, half of them come deep cranking, if not more than that, either a 6XD or an 8XD. I don't like the 10 as much. I use the 10 more for hunting individual big fish if I'm just out there grinding. But that 6XD, you know, with the water lower, a 5XD is going to be a player. A DT10, you might be a player. But if I only had to choose one, that 6XD in any sort of shad pattern. I don't care, you know, about the minutia of it. It's about where you put it. But any shad pattern is work for that deal. As far as deep fish goes, this time of year, again, I'm going to have a jig and spoon on. Jig and spoon and a tail spinner. There's a lot of different companies making tail spinners now. This is the one I use. It's from Lunker Hunt. B&M's got a good one out that Daryl helped design, I think. Kevin, you might have had a part in that. 6 Cents has a gyro. The Jackal Deraku is a good one. But I would always have a tail spinner on and a jig and spoon on, because I can cast this bait. I can jig it vertically. I can do whatever. It catches a lot of fish. A lot of times it'll trigger bites that you're not going to get typically. And the thing about these two baits is they're also species indicators. If I see a fish down on the graph, if I throw either one of those baits down there, I'm going to figure out if they're yellow bass, if they're white bass, if they're spotted bass, if they're largemouth, if there's a mix. Now, for me, if there's trash fish there, which whitefish or trash fish, that's when I'm going to pick up a drop shot or a scope shad. And for me, the bait I'm throwing on a drop shot is a Yamamoto shad shaped worm, the 4-inch. This natural shad, any of the shad patterns are going to work. I'm typically nose hooking them, and that's like a 1 or a size 1. I think that is I don't even know who makes that hook, because I've got such a variety of them. And again, I'm just nose hooking it, because most of the time I'm not throwing this bait around cover. So I don't need to have it Texas rigged on there, and again, they're eating little shad. So that 4-inch shad shaped worm is ideal. But the bait that I've caught the most fish on this year is actually that Yamamoto scope shad. You can see that tail's got a lot of quiver to it. And how I'm rigging this 2 different ways to be successful. One of them is I'm putting it on a jig head and I'm casting it out and I'm hopping it around like a Ned rig, or just dragging it on the bottom. I can fish it, with that jig head. You hear guys talk about a Damiki rig. And so I'm basically just putting it on a jig head like that. And they call it Damiki rigging if I'm vertically fishing with it right underneath the boat on fish I'm seeing. But again, I'm catching most of them just casting it out, either dragging on the bottom or hopping it, and you need a fairly limber rod tip, because that bait is just going to load up. Most of the time, you're not going to feel the bite. You're just going to have a little bit of resistance that you might not even feel, and the rod tip's going to load up, to catch those fish. Now,
Clark, I got one question on the Ned rig.
Mm-hmm.
Weed guard or no weed guard? I've lost a lot of fish, especially at Texoma. I lost a lot of fish on the Ned rig with the weed guard. Didn't know whether to clip it off, leave it on. What's your opinion on the Ned rig with the weed guard?
No weed guard. Okay, because most of the time I'm not throwing this around cover.
Yeah.
If there's hard bottom there, or even around stumps, I might get hung and lose some. That's all the cost of doing business. But your hookup and landing percentage is so much better. And the problem, one of the reasons you're losing a lot of fish with it, is you're slack lining them on a hook set.
Yeah. Okay.
With baits that have an exposed hook, whether it's that drop shot or that scope shad on a jig head or whatever else, you want to just reel all the tension on your line and just lean. Guys think it's funny because I'm not sitting there cracking them in the head on a hook set, but I've seen it and been out there too many times where a guy is going to slack line it and you're going to miss that fish. You're going to stick him for a second. He's going to come unhooked. But with that little exposed hook, that hook is going to penetrate in that fish's mouth, and you're not going to lose them once they are stuck.
Yeah. Okay.
So one other variation for this scope shad, and again, it's the Yamamoto scope shad. I think Yum's got some similar type baits. There's several. It's kind of the hottest deal, these jig head minnows. But one of the ways I'm starting to play around with more is throwing it on a hover rig. And when you get around these fish that are around shad, that hover rig you're going to see more and more guys talking about that. And essentially how you rig it, it ends up having where the eye is going to be above the front of that deal, in front of the bait, and there's weight towards the front of it. And a lot of times that bait is just going to spiral around, and it's just going to kind of glide around a little bit more. And so when you get around these big schools of shad, that's something you can just, cast out in these schools and let it just fall through that shad, and fish that are underneath them will eat it. But here's another little tip. A lot of the fish that are feeding on shad on this lake are above the shad also. So you've got to kind of be aware of that. So again, that's going to be one of the bait I'm going to throw. And then I'm going to give you one hybrid bait for the deep or shallow fishing. I would not show up to Rayburn this time of year without that dumb sucker.
I was wondering if you was going to go there or not.
I don't throw it on guide trips. For one, when you've got 3 guys in a boat, 4 guys in a boat, whatever, you talk about getting hung up. I mean, it is a headache like you wouldn't believe. Yeah. But if you had to commit to one thing, to go deep, shallow, whatever else, this is it.
Yeah.
A while ago when you said, the deep diamond crankbait, I would almost argue with you there that right there has won or been, it has won just as much money as a deep diamond crankbait on Rayburn, in my opinion, from January through March, as the deep diamond crankbait has in the last 10 years or 5 years.
I don't know. That Carolina rig still wins the most money. It's just because there's a sheer amount of people doing it. But again, most of the hammers I know are still deep cranking with an 8XD or a 6XD, catching the big bags. This one might, a lot of people are throwing it, but there's days they don't touch it.
No, I agree with that 100%. And I'll throw that thing till my arm falls off, and that happens to me a lot. Days, especially on live scope. Now you can watch them just follow it, and they'll follow it every cast, and and I'm still throwing it. So anyway.
Well, I can tell you this: when I find schools of fish, I can catch them so much faster and better with that scope shad or with that drop shot, throwing it out, than I can with this thing. For one, speed at which you got to fish it. Okay, so for me fishing the A rig, and this is a Black's Widowmaker. Made by Jamie Black. He lives up in Arkansas. This is the one that everybody in Arkansas throws. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of brands of them out there. The Flash Mob Junior is good. I mean, everybody's got their favorite. Yeah. But how I'm mainly fishing it is I'm chunking it out, letting it go to the bottom, and I'm creeping it along the bottom if I'm not trying to scope fish with it.
Right.
Okay. And the slower you reel it, the better.
And you talk about lose some money when that sucker hangs up on a stump on the bottom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell people, what I do typically is I'm throwing heads most of the time that are for like shaky head fishing.
Yeah.
I'm not up bait hooks because I want, when I hook a stump, is to bend it out.
Right.
And you don't have to get on a hook set either. If you've got constant pressure when you're reeling that bait in, they're going to hook themselves if you just lean. And so if I don't just romp on a stump, I'm able to bend those hooks out like on a shaky head hook on there as opposed to a pure swim bait hook. Because whenever you get a bite on these deals, these wires are going to have so much give. Your rod's going to take a load. And in honesty, and I ask guys this all the time, even jig fishermen, how many times have you honestly bent a hook on a fish that already stress or trauma from you taking one off with a pair of pliers, torquing it around? That's when you bend them more than anything, is bending them with your pliers. Or when you got hung with braid or whatever else and you pulled it straight.
And a lot of times your most vicious bites will be on that A-rig. That A-rig, they will hammer that thing.
Line for the A-rig, Clark. Braid or fluoro?
I'm a fluorocarbon guy. I don't like using braid for hardly anything except on a spinning rod, a frog, and flipping grass.
Yeah.
So for me, fluorocarbon, I don't like hearing it the whole time. I don't like fishing it. I don't enjoy the day. And that's the biggest part about fishing is, you might enjoy feeling more with the braid. I feel enough with the high-end Dobbins rod and fluorocarbon that I don't need the braid to feel as much of the stuff.
Right.
And I don't, I think the braid a lot of times pulls it away from fish because it's too responsive.
Yeah.
Right.
If you move that rod tip 6 inches, say you're trying to shake off a fish in practice and you got braid on there and you move that rod tip 6 inches, you just drove the hook 6 inches in that fish's mouth.
Yeah.
Are you better off throwing it on mono? Is mono a time you might throw that on an A-rig?
I'm not a mono guy. For one, it's got too much stretch.
Right.
Now, fluorocarbon still has stretch, but it's not like a mono rubber band.
Right.
Because
mono's not an option for me for the A-rig. It is straight fluoro or braid.
Yeah.
The only time I throw mono now is for topwater.
Yeah.
So for me, it's fluorocarbon, and I'm throwing 25-pound test fluorocarbon.
Right.
Oh, wow.
I actually swung an 11-pounder one day with 25-pound Seagar, a Brazex, and an 804 Dobbins rod.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was that big, so don't think, hey, this guy is just swinging an 11. I thought it was a 7-pounder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that bait, you can actually fish it shallow, deep, whatever, outside grass line edges, drain guts. Okay, you're gonna hear guys talk about drain guts a lot. That's where a lot of these females are sitting, waiting to move up. They're not just sitting on hard spots. Again, your guys say that a lot, hard spots. But a lot of these females are sitting in that gut, waiting to use that gut as a travel route to go up to wherever they're going to spawn at.
Yeah.
So that A-rig is kind of that transition between deep and shallow. If you only have one rod, that might be one to throw, especially on a team tournament. Have one of you throwing it, the other one not. But let's talk about some shallow fishing real quick. This year, jerkbait is going to be a dominator, straight up dominator, whether you're scoping or not. There's enough stick timber. The water having dropped, it eliminates a lot of the flats you're having to cover water on with the trap. That jerkbait is going to be something that you're able to go down drains blindly, go down drain guts. And because we haven't had a lot of rain, the water is awfully clear, and they will come a long ways to eat that jerkbait. Again, I'm a mega bass guy. I still think it's the best, but there's a lot of different jerk baits out there. 6 cents, I think, as a provoke, a lot of guys are throwing around here. The old Smithwick Rogue is going to catch them. I mean, it's pick your poison, what you have confidence in, but you're going to be able to throw this around standing timber, even if you're not scoping. Okay, people think they're at a handicap without it. You are a little bit, but you can still go to the same areas, jerk bait around standing timber. The more of it's being exposed right now with the water dropping, you're going to be able to fish this around those areas and in those guts. And it's going to draw those fish off the bottom that are sitting there to come up and eat it. And that's going to be a big player. I did not grab any traps. That's kind of the gimme answer right there. I know we have the rattle trap tournament coming up. They got that new hammer trap. I've played with it a little bit. It's legit. But again, there's a lot of companies making lipless baits. But again, it's going to be more of without grass being in a lot of these areas. I really didn't touch on this. I answered this comment on Facebook the other day. A lot of that grass, because the water's low, is not going to be out there deep now. A lot of your grass is going to be shallower. And if you're struggling to find grass and you think you're out there graphing to find grass, just drive around till you see it on the bank, and then it's going to taper off that bank right there where you see it matted. But most of the areas that typically have grass are going to be dry at this point in time.
Yeah, the little bit I've been over there, it's the grass has been visual. Where you see it is where it's at, and it'll be out a little bit in front of it, but other than that, there's no more.
Yeah, it still comes down to bottom composition.
Right.
Either grass there or it can't. But, with the water dropping, it wasn't like that grass grew out there deeper as the new lake bottom, because it just gradually fell, till we got to about the 7-foot range right now. But it wasn't like, oh, the water's falling, that grass is going to all of a sudden grow out here, because the bulk of that grass tends to sprout up in May. Yeah. And when they're in May, that starts flourishing. And that's why we didn't have grass those years when we flooded in May, because the high water killed it.
Clark, weightless Cinco or fluke right now? A little early, or want to wait a little, or is any time a good time for either one of those?
The answer to that is it's a little slow. You better know that there's fish in the area, because you may be covering a lot of water. It's like I talked about when we had the cold front situation. It's about putting it in more fish, and a lot of it's still going to be a reactionary bite this time of year. So I'm still covering water looking for fish. Now, if you know there's fish in that vicinity, in that grass bed around that area, or there's shad there, if there's loons around that grass that you're in, or sea otters around that grass that you're around, there's absolutely fish there, and that's when I would consider slowing down. But for me, it's a little early this time of year, and it's too slow, because I want to cover water. I'm looking for those active fish. And, which brings up another point. The afternoon bite is typically going to be better. You're going to get a window right now. That first hour of the morning, these fish pull up. That's when a lot of these mega bags are caught. But then those fish disappear. And then you're just grinding. But that afternoon bite, when the water warms up another degree or two, those fish get more active. The shad pulls up more typically in the afternoon. I don't know if it's to warm themselves, or there's this deal where there's plankton and stuff. I don't know if you've seen it on your graph. As it gets closer to the evening time, your graph will get more cluttered. And I think that shad pulls up on that plankton and stuff. but the afternoon bite is definitely better for a lot of that warming up. But let me just hit on 2 more baits real quick. Your jackhammer, any sort of shad pattern, green pumpkin, black and blue. It's simple enough. I'm not a red chatterbait type of guy, but again, it's about covering water. This will rip through the grass easy, but do not forget a big spinner bait. That bait is kind of fallen out of favor. Your 3/4 1 ounce spinner baits. Again, these drain guts are shallower now. You're able to slow roll that bait in these guts to catch big ones. And most of these old timers will tell you about the big bags they used to catch throwing big spinner baits, and it's kind of fallen out. People don't do it as much anymore, but that is an absolute deal.
Yeah. Well, Clark, man, I appreciate it. Appreciate you taking the time to visit with us today, kind of give us a little report. It's fixing to blow up over there. I mean, it's, every weekend it's going to be a major tournament. We've got a lot of high school stuff coming up. So this would definitely help some guys out. And we sure appreciate you taking your time and catching us up.
Yeah, man.
Well, thanks for making me talk about Toledo Bend.
Yeah, we're not going to go there today.
Yeah,
I'm a talker. I just don't go to Toledo Bend. I spend too much time at Rayburn. It's too hard to learn both lakes. Yeah. So kudos to guys that dominate on both, because it takes a lot of time.
That's hard. That's hard to do. No doubt about that. Not much going on Toledo Bend in January. February really kicks off. We got MLF and the Bassmaster Elites coming up back to back over there. But really, January is very quiet on Toledo Bend. Now, March is every weekend a $20,000 tournament coming up. Big summer on Toledo Bend. But right now, it's really quiet. Everything's really about Sam Rayburn. Again, really why we wanted to get you on, because it's, January is the month for Sam Rayburn. That's just all it is to it.
Yep.
So. Yeah, I wish they'd send some of those high school tournaments over there to Toledo.
No. Y'all keep them over there. We don't need them. We don't need them.
But those tournaments in Toledo, you are going to see the world's best scoper dominate those events over there in January and February, because that is how they go off. Dakota E-Bear is going to have a field day.
But that MLF, like and I'm not a fan of the every fish counts, just me personally. It did go back to that. I'm sorry. So the MLF, it might not be, because there's going to be some of them guys. Justin Cooper is fishing the Bass Pro Tour this year. A lot of locals, they're going to be able to get out there and catch. It's going to be hard for the scopers, I think, to compete. Now, the Elite Series, those scopers will rule that tournament. They are going to, I think, catch some mega bags, and we'll get into that when it gets closer. But MLF, I think they're going to catch the fire out of them, being the every fish counts thing. But the scopers will show out at the Elite Series on Toledo Bend, no doubt.
Yeah, but you got to decide. You go for quality and run the score up with bigs, because there's enough of them there to do it. Or do you sit there and wang on a school of 2-pounders? I know Justin Cooper knows where a bunch of those are. I didn't forget.
Yeah, but when you can catch a 2-pounder every cast, because you can do that until you can do it right now, So
yeah.
But anyway,
I was always hoping to get in one of those there at Rayburn.
Yeah,
because I've got all the spots to do that. So,
Clark, man, we appreciate you.
All right, thank you guys for having me on.
All right, we just heard from the man himself, Clark Reehm, who's going to be fishing the EQs this next year with BASS. And great report there, Kevin. You did a wonderful job breaking everything down, and great advice on what to be throwing, especially in the month of January.
Yeah, no, Clark's been out there, and he's a deep guy. He's going to give us kind of that report. Wasn't able to really get much of the shallow water grass stuff off of him, because that's what Clark does. He's a deep guy. He's going to catch them deep. He's going to catch them scoping. He's going to catch them Carolina rigging, and that's what he does. But like he said, the grass, it's not, and I haven't been over there very much, Steve. I haven't. I've been more on Toledo, the little bit I've been able to go lately now that living down here in Lafayette where I'm living. It's the grass is not everywhere, but you can still catch them out of it. There will be some good bags caught in the grass this weekend in that BFL. There will be several good bags caught up there in the grass, no doubt about that.
We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we're going to talk about the upcoming tournaments in the month of January over at Rayburn, and let you kind of get an idea of what's happening. Yeah, there are some on the same days as other tournaments, but that's just that time of year. Get ready. It's the norm now. That's the new norm. We've got lake reports as far as lake levels for Toledo Bend, Sam Rayburn. We'll go over all that as well. You're watching Tackle Talk Live. We'll be right back.
Pride Rods, custom-built fishing rods made to handle any and all techniques. Fishing rods designed for sensitivity and made to last in Montgomery, Texas. Built by Billy Kistler with the finest Gary Loomis North Fork composite blanks available. They offer a complete line of spinning and casting rods for both fresh and salt water. Pride Rods do more than pass the eye test. They excel in performance as well. Ask your local tackle dealer if they carry Pride Rods and pick one up to try it for yourself. Take pride in your fishing by using Pride Rods. To learn more, go to priderods.com or call 832-418-6040. The Lakes Insurance Agency is an independent insurance agency taking care of Texans' insurance needs for over 25 years, offering auto, homeowners, boat, RV, life, health, and commercial insurance. Owner Clark Moore is a local fishing guide and tournament angler who understands your insurance needs and wants to be your go-to guide for all your insurance needs. For a free quote, give him a call and see why so many Texans trust the Lake Insurance Agency. 2 locations to serve you in both Nacogdoches and Broadus, Texas. Or give him a call at 936-205-4467. The next time you're headed for Toledo Bend or Sam Rayburn, stop by Keith's Toledo Bend Tackle. They have an awesome supply of everything you'll need to catch the big ones. Whether your trip calls for bass fishing, white perch tackle, catfish bait, or the ultimate fighting shiners, Keith's Tackle has you covered. Keith and former Elite Series pro Ben Matsubu also have the latest information on what, how, and where you need to be fishing on Sam Rayburn or the Bend. So for all your tackle needs, check out Keith's Toledo Bend Tackle, located just off Highway 21 on the Texas side of Toledo Bend, or call 409-625-0181. You're watching Tackle Talk Live, a show dedicated to making you a better angler. Now back to the guys with all the inside scoop, Kevin Jean and Steve Graff.
You're watching Tackle Talk Live. This segment presented by Pride Rods, Keith's Toledo Bend Tackle, the Lakes Insurance of Nacogdoches with 2 locations, one in Nacogdoches and one on the shores of Sam Rayburn and Broadus, Texas, and Power Implements Marine located in Iowa, Louisiana. And if you mention Tackle Talk Live, you'll get $500 off a new or used boat, or you can apply $50 off your first service work done there at Power Implements Marine located right there in Iowa, Louisiana. We appreciate you guys. Thank you for all your support, and looking forward to a good 2024 with them, Kevin.
Yeah, we are. And it's going to be a good year. There's no doubt about it. Now, let's see. We got yeah. So, Steve, let's jumping into 2024. Let's talk about upcoming tournaments we have coming up. This weekend, we've already mentioned BFL on Sam Rayburn, January 6th. This weekend out of Umphrey. Very next weekend, the SE Techs High School, January 13th, Sam Rayburn out of Umphrey Pavilion. The very next day, on Sunday, January 14th, is the Skeeter Outlaw Team Series number 1. The Outlaw Outdoors Tournament is going out of Umphrey Pavilion as well. That'll be on Sunday. The very next week, January 19th through the 20th, is the Solo 150. And I believe it's going out of Castle Boykins, correct, Steve?
Yes, it's out of Castle Boykin. All ABA's tournaments will always go out of Castle Boykin. So
the 19th and the 20th is the Solo 150 out of Castle Boykins. The 20th is the Bass Champs out of Umphrey Pavilion. Yes. And then 21st is the Rattle Trap Tournament. I'm pretty sure they're going out Umphrey. Then the Rattle Trap Tournament is the 21st. So 19th, 20th, 21st, that weekend, big weekend. And the very next weekend, the Brandon Belt Tournament, January 27th to 28th. So big month of, just like it is every January on Sam Rayburn. This is what it's like every January. It's the way it's been for the last 10, 15 years for January on Sam Rayburn. So,
but this low water and 3 tournaments in one weekend with plus guys scouting, I mean, it's going to fish a lot smaller right now than it has been. Guys aren't going to run. They're not going to want to run like they're used to running. It's going to be, you're going to be fishing. There's going to be some tempers flare a little bit in the next.
Well, I'll tell you where the tempers are going to flare, Steve, and that's when you're putting the boat in, taking the boat out. I mean, it's so dang low. I went over there. I went and jumped in the boat with Gleason day before yesterday, New Year's Eve maybe. And I met him at the boat ramp and jumped in the boat with him, and I hardly couldn't get in the boat with him. I mean, it's so, well, one, because Gleason don't want me to get his dirt. His boat all dirty and everything. So I, had to wash my shoes off and there. But you can't there's only a few places let's say in the BFL this weekend, if co-angler drops you off, there's only a few places that you can get the boat to the bank to pick him up, and there's so little water in the cove for takeoff. It's going to be interesting. A lot of the tournaments that still do takeoffs to see how they're going to manage that.
No, that's exactly right. And of course, hopefully within this next month, hopefully we got some rain coming in that help race. But I heard through the grapevine, Kevin, you confirm if you've heard this or not, they're not looking to let Rayburn come back up. They're looking to keep it down for a while. Have you heard that?
There's so much going on. I haven't heard anything that I don't want to say anything yet that I've heard, because a lot of it's hearsay, like you said, a lot of it's rumors. I have not went to the horse's mouth, no, but I will find that out for next week's show. I will find out the exactly what's going on, and we'll update everybody next week.
Yeah. Okay. Real quick, water levels, Rayburn the pool level is 164. Right now they're at 157.08. That's 7.32 feet low. That's a lot of water out of the lake right now. 10-day loss has been 1.2 inches, and the 24-hour loss has been 0.36. So that makes me wonder, I guess the gates are open for the lake level to be dropping. That's all I can figure.
Now, we do got some good rain coming this week. Middle of the week, we do have some good rain coming. So.
Right. Toledo Bend, a little bit better shape. 172 is pulled there. 167.89 right now is where the lake is at. That's 4.11 feet low. 10-day gain of 2.28 inches and a 24-hour gain of 2.16 inches. So it's actually on the rise.
Yeah, it is. We got some of that rain last week that we got. And like I said, we got some more rain coming up this week. I see Toledo kind of creeping back up a little bit. I don't want it creeping up too much for all those spring guys wanting to go flip the bushes. Right. I do and I don't. I don't want that to be a player that I have to worry about beating me, but also because that's not me. That's not what I go do. But I also want it to be a player that they go do it and get away from me too. So yeah. I don't know what I want to happen there on Toledo.
Right. Kev, that's all I got. You got anything else?
No, that kind of does it for today. We just kind of start the year back off. Fishing report, Sam Rayburn, everything going on over there. We'll see what happens this weekend. Maybe we'll get the winner of the BFL on. Maybe if there's a big fish get caught. We kind of take it week by week of what the big story is for that weekend, and what we think everybody wants to hear on Tuesday. On the Tuesday of the following week. So see what happens this weekend and see who we can get to be a guest on the show. And we'll be back next week and get this year kicked off.
All right. We appreciate you tuning us in today. Check us out on our YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or wherever else you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to become a member of our sponsorship team, even though we've got a great group right now, we welcome any and all sponsors that would like to come on board. Please message us on our Facebook page, and Kevin will make sure he sends out a detailed packet. He'll also give you a call and go over the details with you. For Kevin Jean, yours truly, Steve Graff. Thank you for listening. We appreciate each and every one of you guys. We're glad we're back. Looking forward to seeing you guys at the lakes. And we'll see you next week with more Tackle Talk Live.